Hi and welcome back. In this video, we're going to go ahead and put the final touches on our page CSS and get ready to begin to create the actual pages for our website. So I'm going to go ahead and come back here and open my main.html file. And let's go ahead and take a look at this in Chrome here. And we can see a few things that we need to start off doing. The first thing, and let me go ahead and bring up the completed version of our template. The first thing that I want to do is go ahead and format the rest of my fonts here. You can see the font for my top navigation and my social media section, as well as my sidebar and content area and footer are different. And we want to set those to be Arial instead of this default Times New Roman font. And we actually want Arial to be the default font whenever we haven't specifically specified another font like we have for our heading styles here. So I'm going to come back in here to Dreamweaver and I'm going to open up my style sheet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the body tag right here. And you'll remember your body tag encompasses everything on your page. So if you specify a font in your body tag, that's going to become the default font for your page. In our case, since we're also using a wrapper, we could use the wrapper in exactly the same way. So I'm going to go ahead and click up here in my body section, and the style that I'm going to go ahead and use, or the property that I'm going to go ahead and use, is font family, and the font that I want to specify is Arial. And again, I'm going to use Helvetica and sans serif as the alternate fonts. Make sure you get your semicolon in there and make sure that there's the closing curly brace is in the proper location. And then let's go ahead and take a look at this again and let's see. Yep, we've gone ahead and successfully changed all of the font styles that are here. Now when we look at this again in the completed version, we can see actually my fonts for my paragraphs in my right sidebar and my content area are a little bit smaller than what we have set up in our default here. So I want to change the font size for both the right sidebar, the paragraphs in both the right sidebar and the content area. So I'm going to go ahead and come back in here to my style sheet, and I'm going to scroll down, and here is the main content area. But I don't want to specify the font size for everything in the content area because I don't want to affect my headings. The only thing that I want to change are the paragraphs of text that are in here. And I want to make those smaller. And I also want to increase the line height so that they don't look quite as smooshed together. So I'm going to go ahead and again I'm going to restrict this font to just the content div. So I'm going to go ahead and put that ID in there, and then I'm going to go ahead and specify the P tag. We'll do our opening curly brace, and I'm going to select the font size property, and I'm going to make it 12 pixels. I also want to affect the line height to space things out so the text doesn't look as dense. So I'm going to go ahead and use the line height property, and I'm going to specify the line height as being 140% of whatever the default is. And you could use a percentage for that, or you could actually put in a fixed value, which in this case 140% of the default line height for a 12 pixel font is 17 pixels. But if I don't want to figure that out, you can just go ahead and set it as a percentage, and then when you look at your page, you can adjust it accordingly. So let's go ahead and preview this, and you can see the font has gotten smaller in my content area, but the line height still is, everything is still pretty dense. So I'm going to go ahead and make this 180%. Let's go ahead and save that. And I actually can just refresh this. And now you can see the fonts have been spaced out. The lines have been spaced out just a little bit more for me there. I also want to go ahead and change the font color for these subheadings that are in here. So let's go ahead and go back into Dreamweaver, and we can see that these subheadings that were placed in the content area are actually level 2 headings. I've got my H2s there and H2 here. So I'm going to change the font color for my H2s in my content area. So again, I'm going to specify the content div and the H2 tag, and the property that I'm going to use is color. I'm going to select the color option from the Dreamweaver hint right there just by clicking on it. And I can select any color that I want from in here, or I can click on the color wheel and choose a color. Again, I can go ahead and change the brightness or the contrast of that. And again, you can always come back and change that look the way you want it to look. Now we'll go ahead and preview this in Chrome, and you can see I've now got my subheadings with a different color. Now let's go ahead and do the right hand sidebar area. And again, I want to go ahead and remove these extras from right here. Here's our finished version, and you can see again our headings have a different color and our font is a different size over here. Only in this case, both the paragraphs as well as these list styles right here are going to be smaller. So we want to go ahead and specify both LI items as well as our P tags in our right sidebar. I'll go ahead and close that off. And let's come back into our main.html. And here's our right sidebar, and we can see again, there's our H2s right there. And we want to change the color of those. So I'm going to come down here into my right side area and specify right side. And whoops, I forgot to specify that I want to affect my H2 tags, not everything. We'll do a curly brace color, and I actually want to go ahead and use the exact same color as I did in my content area. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that value and paste it in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and close my curly brace. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for my paragraphs. When I specify the font size, I'm going to specify them for being 12 pixels, and I'm going to set the line height to being 180%. Exactly the same as my content area, and I want to duplicate that for my list items. My font size is going to be 12 pixels, and my line height is going to be 180%. So let's go ahead and save that, and then I'll come back into my HTML and preview this in Chrome. And now we can see our headings now have that color, and our paragraphs and list items are the appropriate size. Now, the next things that we need to do is we need to format our top navigation links here, as well as our footer down here. And the footer, you can see the font change took effect because we applied that font family to the body. But we still need to center our footer text, and we want to make it a little bit smaller. We can see here in our completed version the way this is going to look. And we also want to go ahead and make it bold. So let's go ahead and go back into Dreamweaver, and we can see our footer here. And we can see that that's inside of a paragraph tag or a P tag. So I'm going to come into my style sheet, and after the main footer style, I'm going to specify that we're going to format our P tags, and I'm going to use the text align property and use the value center to center that. I'm also going to set the font size for being 14 pixels and set the font weight to being bold. And let's go ahead and save that. Go back into our HTML page and preview this in Chrome. And let's see how that looks. And there we go. Everything is centered nicely. It's bold, and the font's a little bit larger. And actually at this point, you can see here I use these parallel lines to separate some of the different content that's in here. For instance, the copyright from all rights reserved, from company name, and then from the zip code and the phone number here. And you see that quite often. And a lot of times what people want to do is they actually don't like that parallel line, even though it's very common on websites. And they want to replace it with some sort of a symbol. So let's say we wanted to put a circular bullet point in between those items instead of that horizontal line. Now the horizontal line is easy to get because it's just a key on your keyboard. But there are a lot of characters that you can access inside of HTML, like bullets, that don't have a corresponding key on your keyboard that you can just type them out. And if you want to use one of those characters, you need to know the HTML character code. You need to know the HTML character code for it. And in my case, I know what the HTML character code is going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and come back into my HTML here. And actually, you can see we did that with the copyright symbol here. We put in the HTML character code. And I'm going to highlight that horizontal bar. And to do a circular bullet, you're going to do the ampersand, BULL, and then a semicolon. And I'm actually just going to highlight that and copy it and paste it on top of these other two lines there. And let's save that and preview this in Chrome. And now when we come down here, we can see I have bullet points, and there's the copyright symbol also. If you want to find a list of all the HTML character codes that you can use, and you can always tell in your HTML what's an HTML character code because they always begin with an ampersand symbol. If you want to find a list of all those HTML character codes, you can just Google HTML character codes, and you'll find lots of websites that have them out there. Or if you've downloaded the course materials for this class, along with the handouts that you saw earlier, there's a handout on HTML character codes. Also, Dreamweaver will provide you a hint for HTML character codes. for example, if I go ahead and just type an ampersand, you can see that it's going to bring up a list of the popular character codes here. And as I scroll down, you'll see if we get to these different ones here, like the registration mark, so on and so forth. And there's the bullet point. So Dreamweaver will also give you some hints there, but a handout or a printout of a web page might be very helpful for you. And it's also easier to see all the different symbols that you have access to. Now, the last thing that I want to go ahead and do in this video is take care of my top navigation styles right here. And again, we're not doing the drop down arrows right now. We're going to do that in a later video. But we do want to change the color of our links from blue to black. We want to remove the underline from underneath them. And we also want to make them bold. So 3 things. We want to make them bold, we want to make them black, and we want to remove the underline. So let's go ahead and come back into our CSS here and come up to my top navigation styles. So now what I'm going to do is on a blank line, I'm going to go ahead and format my different link styles that can be in my top navigation section. And you'll remember there are 5 different states that your links can be in. The normal state, which you just do a:link. The visited state, which is a:visited. And I'm just sort of typing them in here before I actually put the property value statements in. The active state, the hover state, and finally the focus state. And you'll remember I wanted to specify several things about these. Now, regardless of what state my link is in, I want it to be bold and I want to remove the underline. So I'm going to go ahead and type both of those in first. The first thing I'm going to do is font weight, and I'm going to specify it as being bold, and then text dash decoration is the property that I use to either put an underline on something or to remove the underline. And if I want to remove the underline, I select none. So those are the 2 styles that I want for actually all of my different states. I may want to change those later, but I'm just going to go ahead and put those all in there right now. And we're going to go ahead and save that, and let's go ahead and take a look and see how that has affected our links. And you can see now the underline is gone, they're bold. One thing that I didn't do is I didn't make them all uppercase. So let's go ahead and do that at this point as well. We'll make them uppercase. And we also want to change the font color. And I also want to put a hover color, a different hover color on those as well. So I'm going to go ahead and to make those all uppercase, the property that I'm going to use is going to be text transform. And I'm going to select uppercase, and the color that I'm going to want to use is black, and that's going to be 3 zeros. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that in for all of these here. Only I'm going to change the color value for hover and focus. And when we roll over those, I want it to be that same orange that I used for my headings, or for my subheadings, I should say. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that value there, and paste it over those items there. And now let's go ahead and see what, whoops, I selected the wrong item there. Let's go ahead and see how that's going to look inside of Chrome. And you can see the values, or the way that is looking there. And I actually think in my finished version, I actually made the font a little bit smaller. I made the font size 14 pixels. You can go ahead and set that to being whatever you want for that. So that just about completes the basic CSS that we're going to go ahead and set up for our page. Now at this point, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and create the actual pages for our site. And we're going to learn about how to work with Dreamweaver templates, how to make page templates inside of Dreamweaver. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do in the next video. I will see you then.